February 21st, 1942. 3 o'clock hours. The mid-Atlantic gap. The air inside the HMS Gardenia is thick with the smell of unwashed wool, stale tobacco, and the sharp, metallic tang of fear. You're 800 miles from the nearest coastline, too far for any Allied bomber to reach you. This is the Black Pit, a stretch of ocean where the sky offers no protection and the water belongs to the ghosts. Suddenly, the ping of the ASDIC sonar changes. It's no longer a rhythmic pulse, it's a frantic shriek. Contact. Starboard bow. Outside, the Atlantic is a churning nightmare of black ink and white foam. Beneath the surface, Captain Lieutenant Reinhard Hartigan peers through a periscope, his eyes fixed on the silhouette of a merchant tanker carrying 10,000 tons of aviation fuel. He whispers a single word: fewer. The explosion doesn't just sound like a blast. It feels like the world is being torn in half. A pillar of fire erupts 300 feet into the midnight sky, turning the ocean into a landscape of burning oil. As the tanker buckles, its back snapping like a dry twig, men are thrown into water so cold it stops the heart in seconds. This isn't just a battle, it's an execution. And for the men of the Royal Navy, the most terrifying part isn't the torpedoes, it's the silence. For weeks, the airwaves have been dead. The German U-boats, the Grey Wolves, have gone invisible. The British Admiralty is flying blind, and the UK is 20 days away from starving to death. 60 miles north of London, in the rolling green hills of Buckinghamshire, the war feels different. There are no explosions here, only the relentless rhythmic clack-clack-clack of typewriters and the smell of floor wax. This is Bletchley Park, inside a cramped, drafty wooden shack known as Hut 8. A 24-year-old woman named Joan Clarke sits at a desk cluttered with stacks of squared paper and sharpened pencils. She doesn't wear a uniform. She doesn't have a gun. Her weapon is a logic so sharp it cuts through steel. Joan had arrived at Bletchley 2 years earlier. Despite having a double first-class degree in mathematics from Cambridge, the British government didn't have a job title for a female mathematician. On her official paperwork, she is listed as a linguist. When she asked for a promotion to earn more than the base-level clerks, she was told she had to fill out her vocation as linguist again because the civil service had no category for a woman who could solve the most complex differential equations in Europe. But in Hut 8, titles don't matter. Only the cribs matter. For months, Joan and her colleague, a socially awkward genius named Alan Turing, had been winning the war. They had cracked the Enigma, the German cipher machine that scrambled every message into trillions of possible combinations. By reading the U-boat's radio traffic, they could tell the convoys where the wolfpacks were waiting, allowing the ships to slip past in the night. But on February 1st, 1942, everything changed. The German Navy, suspicious that their codes were being compromised, introduced a new variable. They didn't just change the settings, they changed the machine. They added a fourth rotor to the Enigma, an upgrade the Allies codenamed Shark. Overnight, Bletchley went dark. The trillions of possibilities became quadrillions. "It's a wall," Turing mutters, staring at the blank intercepts. "We can't climb it. We can't go around it." The blackout has lasted for weeks. While the mathematicians sit in the suffocating silence of Hut 8, the North Atlantic is becoming a graveyard. In the last 30 days, the U-boats have sunk nearly 500,000 tons of shipping. Every ship that goes down takes with it the food, fuel, and soldiers needed to keep the light of democracy flickering in Europe. Joan Clarke looks at the mountain of gibberish on her desk. She isn't looking for words. She's looking for a rhythm, a flaw in the Germans' perceived perfection. She realizes that the Germans, in their obsession with order, have a weakness. They are creatures of habit. She picks up a pencil. She isn't just trying to break a code anymore. She's trying to read the mind of the man who built the machine. But as the candles burn low in the hut, a messenger bursts in with a fresh intercept. It's a weather short signal from the Bay of Biscay. Usually these are the keys to the kingdom. But with the fourth rotor engaged, the math required to solve it would take a human brain 20 years. Joan looks at the clock. They don't have 20 years. They have 6 hours before the next convoy enters the kill zone. She leans over her desk, her eyes narrowing at a string of letters that make no sense to anyone else. "Alan," she says softly, her voice steady despite the weight of 10,000 lives on her shoulders. "I don't think we need to climb the wall. I think we can make the machine break itself." March 12, 1942. Hut 8, Bletchley Park, 4:15 hours. The heating in the shack has failed again. Joan Clarke's fingers are blue with cold, yet she doesn't stop. In front of her lie the Banbury sheets, long yellowish strips of paper printed in the town of Banbury, from which they take their name. They are covered in thousands of tiny, hand-punched holes. To an outsider, this looks like a child's craft project. In reality, it is the most sophisticated statistical weapon in the Allied arsenal. Joan is performing a process called Banburismus. Since the Germans added that devastating fourth rotor to the M4 Enigma, the sheer number of combinations has jumped from 17,576 to 456,976 for every single rotor setting. There are 3.2 quadrillion possible configurations. If you sat down and tried to test one every second, the sun would burn out before you found the right one. "We don't have to solve the whole machine," Joan whispers, her breath misting in the freezing air. "We just have to find the overlap." She takes 2 Banbury sheets, each representing a different intercepted message, and overlays them. She slides the top sheet over the bottom one, millimeter by millimeter. She is looking for fits. When the holes in both sheets align, it indicates a statistical coincidence. If enough holes align at a specific position, it proves that both messages were encoded using the same rotor settings. It is a game of pure probability. It is like trying to find 2 people in a crowd of millions who happen to be humming the exact same note at the exact same time. Suddenly, Joan stops. Her eyes lock onto a sequence. Through the holes, she sees the light from the desk lamp. A match, then another, and another. "Alan," she calls out. Turing is at the far end of the room, obsessing over a different problem. He jogs over, his erratic energy filling the cramped space. He looks at the sheets. He does the mental math in a heartbeat. "The deciband count is high," Turing mutters, referring to the unit of measurement he invented to track the probability of a code being cracked. "Joan, if this is a match, we've isolated the first 2 rotors." But the excitement is short-lived. A match doesn't mean they can read the messages yet. It only means they've narrowed the search from trillions to billions. They are still drowning in data. While Joan works the sheets, 3,000 miles away, the tragedy she is trying to prevent is unfolding in slow motion. March 13, 1942. The North Atlantic. The RMS Empress of Canada is carrying 1,800 people, including Italian prisoners of war and Polish refugees. It is a high-value target. Beneath the waves, U-172 is tracking her. The German commander, Karl Emmermann, doesn't need a code to find her. He just needs his hydrophones. The U-boat crew is calm. They know the British are deaf and dumb. For weeks, they have transmitted their positions back to Admiral Dunitz in Lorient without fear. They believe their 4-rotor Enigma is an unbreakable wall of mathematics. Back in Hut 8, the pressure is reaching a breaking point. The Admiralty is calling every hour. "Do you have shark? Is the M4 broken?" The answer is always no. Joan's role is unique. She is the only woman among the Banburists and arguably the most gifted. While the men often get distracted by the complexity of the machine, Joan has a feel for the German operators. She notices that a particular operator in the Baltic always starts his weather report with the same phrase. She realizes that the habit of the human being is the one thing the machine cannot scramble. "They're lazy," she remarks to Turing. "The Germans?" Turing asks. "No, the operators. They're tired, Alan. They've been at sea for weeks. They want to go home. They're using the same three-letter indicators they used yesterday because it's easier." She begins to map these lazy habits. This is the crib, a piece of plain text that the codebreakers guess is hidden inside the encrypted mess. If Joan can correctly guess that a message contains the word wettervorsage, weather forecast, she can use that as a lever to pry open the entire cipher. But it's a gamble. If she's wrong about even one letter, the entire day's work is wasted. She picks up her pencil and begins to mark the Banbury sheets again. She is no longer just a mathematician. She is a hunter. She is tracking the German Navy through the shadows of their own psychology. Hours pass. The sun begins to bleed through the blackout curtains of Bletchley Park. Joan's eyes are bloodshot, her neck stiff. She reaches the end of a sheet and pauses. Something is wrong. The math isn't just matching, it's screaming. She has found a double-ended coincidence. A statistical anomaly so rare it shouldn't exist. "Alan," she says, her voice trembling slightly, "I think I found it. Not just a rotor setting. I think I've found the key to the entire month's traffic." Turing leans over her shoulder. The room goes silent. The other Banburists stop their scratching. If Joan is right, the blackout is over. If she's right, they can see every U-boat in the Atlantic. But as they begin to run the numbers through the bomb, the massive clattering electromechanical computer designed to test the final settings, a red light begins to flicker on the control panel. The machine grinds to a halt. A gear has jammed. "We don't have time to fix it," Turing snaps, his face pale. "The next broadcast is in 10 minutes. Joan looks at the broken machine, then at her Banbury sheets. She realizes that the math she just did suggests something even more terrifying than a broken code. She realizes that the Germans haven't just changed the rotors. They've changed the way they use them. They aren't just sending weather reports anymore, Joan says, her eyes wide as she stares at the raw data. They're sending coordinates. Massive coordinates. Alan, they're not just hunting ships. They're gathering for a wolfpack trap. And we just sent Convoy HX-180 right into the center of it. March 14, 1942. Convoy HX 180.600 miles south of Iceland. Commodore J.C.K. Dowding stands on the bridge of the lead escort. Through his binoculars, he sees nothing but gray sky, gray swells, and the gray hulls of 45 merchant ships lumbering behind him. They are carrying the lifeblood of England, Canadian wheat, American steel, and high-octane fuel. He doesn't know that 50 fathoms below, the gray wolves are already there. Admiral Dunitz has orchestrated a Ruddle Tactica wolfpack. Guided by the new four-rotor Enigma settings, 7 U-boats have formed a scouting line across the convoy's path. They are silent, waiting for the sun to drop. They aren't attacking yet. They are shadowing, reporting the convoy's speed and heading back to France in bursts of encrypted data that Bletchley Park is currently failing to read. Hut 8, Bletchley Park. The bomb machine is a carcass of copper wire and spinning drums. Technicians are frantically tearing at its casing, trying to clear the jam. Joan Clarke stands amidst the mechanical chaos, but she isn't looking at the machine. She's looking at her hand-drawn charts. "The bomb is too slow," Joan says, her voice cutting through the panic. "Even if we fix it, it's testing for the old M3 configurations. The fourth rotor, it's the beta rotor. It doesn't move like the others." Turing stops. He looks at her. "What do you mean it doesn't move?" "The Germans are using the fourth rotor in a neutral position for most of these messages," Joan explains, her pencil flying across the Banbury sheet. "They retreating the four-rotor machine like a three-rotor machine to maintain compatibility with the older units. But they've added a short signal offset. It is a stunning insight." Joan has realized that the German Navy's greatest strength, their massive fleet, is also their greatest weakness. Because not every U-boat has the new M4 machine yet, the High Command is forcing the new machines to mimic the old ones. She hasn't just found a flaw in the math. She's found a flaw in the German bureaucracy. If we bypass the fourth rotor settings and calculate the offset manually, Joan continues, we can use the 3 rotor bombs to crack the M4 traffic. It's a mathematical backdoor. It shouldn't work. It's the equivalent of trying to open a high-security vault with a skeleton key from a Victorian house. But Joan's logic is airtight. Do it, Turing orders. Joan sits back down. The room disappears. There is only the grid, the holes in the Banbury sheets, and the relentless logic of probability. She begins to perform complex mental subtractions, adjusting for the neutral rotor position she's hypothesized. Minutes bleed into hours. The pressure is suffocating. In the Admiralty's O room in London, the tracking map shows the icons for Convoy HX-180 moving directly into a cluster of red U-boat symbols. The officers there are holding their breath, waiting for the Z messages that decrypted intercepts that haven't come in weeks. At 18 o'clock hours, Joan stops. She has a string of letters. They look like nonsense. RALPNDSGTYR. She feeds them into a manual Enigma simulator, a small device used for testing. She types the first letter. Click. The second. Click. On the output board, letters begin to glow. Not random gibberish, but words. B, STIENDIGE. Steady. C, T. Visibility. We're in, Joan whispers. She continues typing, her heart hammering against her ribs. The message clarifies. It's a position report from U558. It gives the exact coordinates for the Wolfpack. Hecht. They're here, Joan calls out, her voice cracking. She points to a spot on the map. 7 boats. They're waiting at 56 degrees north. They're going to strike at 22 o'clock hours. Turing grabs the transcript. He doesn't say good job. He doesn't have time. He runs to the direct teleprinter link to the Admiralty. In London, the teleprinter begins to chitter. An officer rips the paper from the machine. His eyes widen. It's from Hut 8. They've cracked shark. Within 60 seconds, a high-frequency radio signal is beamed out from the giant masts at Rugby. It's a flash priority message encrypted in the British Type-X codecode the Germans have never broken. March 14, 1942, 1930 hours. Convoy HX-180. On the bridge of the HMS Gardenia, the radio operator sprints to Commodore Dowding. Message from Admiralty, sir. Immediate course change. Execute starboard 90 immediately. Dowding doesn't ask why. He trusts the black magic from Bletchley. 45 ships, acting as one, swing their rudders. They turn away from the setting sun, staring into a patch of heavy fog to the north. 2 hours later, Captain Lieutenant Gunther Kreck of U-558 surfaces. He looks through his binoculars at the exact spot where the British convoy should be. The ocean is empty. He checks his coordinates. He checks his Enigma settings. Nothing. The great trap has snapped shut on thin air. The U-boats cruise in circles, burning precious fuel, searching for a ghost fleet that has already slipped through their fingers. Back in Hut 8, the silence is finally broken not by an explosion, but by the sound of Joan Clarke sharpening her pencil. She has just saved 1,800 lives and 200,000 tons of supplies. But as she looks at the next stack of intercepts, her face pales. The Germans aren't giving up. They've realized the convoy escaped, and Admiral Dönitz is sending a new, even more terrifying command. Alan, Joan says, looking at the decrypted text. They're not just looking for the convoy anymore. They've ordered the boats to move to the American coast. They're calling it Operation Paukenschlag, Operation Drumbeat. the war wasn't over. It was just moving to the one place the Allies least expected. May 5, 10th, 1942, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, USA. If you were standing on the boardwalk that night, you could hear the faint sounds of a jazz band drifting from the hotels. The lights of the American Eastern Seaboard are blazing neon signs, street lamps, and car headlights casting a golden glow over the Atlantic. To the Americans, the war is something happening over there in the ruins of London or the snows of Russia. But 2 miles out, Captain Lieutenant Reinhard Hartigan stands on the bridge of U-123. He is laughing. Through his binoculars, the American tankers aren't just targets. They are silhouettes perfectly backlit by the city lights. "It's like a shooting gallery," he remarks to his watch officer. "The Americans haven't ordered a blackout. They haven't organized convoys. They are serving up their merchant marine on a silver platter. With a soft whoosh, a torpedo leaves the tube." Minutes later, a fireball erupts so close to the shore that vacationers on the beach feel the heat on their faces. This is Operation Drumbeat. For the U-boat crews, it is the second happy time. For the Allies, it is a massacre. Hut 8, Bletchley Park, 2 o'clock hours. While the American coast burns, Joan Clarke is fighting a different kind of fire. The Shark Cipher, the four-rotor M4, has become a shapeshifter. Just as Joan and the team think they've mastered the neutral position of the fourth rotor, the German Navy changes the procedure again. The blackout has returned. Hut 8 is once again a room filled with the sound of silence. Joan is now the deputy head of Hut 8. She is the only woman in the room with the authority to direct the male cryptanalysts, a position unheard of in 1940s Britain. But she doesn't have time to savor the glass ceiling she just shattered. She is staring at a short signal from the U-boat U-559. "They're using a different book," she mutters. The short signals were the Achilles heel of the Enigma. To avoid being tracked by Allied radio direction finders, U-boats didn't send long, rambling messages. They sent highly compressed codes, four-letter groups that represented entire sentences. EEE might mean fuel is low. XYZ might mean sighted enemy destroyer. To break these, Joan needs the short signal codebook. But the codebooks are printed in water-soluble ink. If a U-boat is boarded, the captain throws the book overboard or the ink dissolves the moment it touches the sea. "We can't guess the math if we don't know the vocabulary," Turing says, pacing the room like a caged animal. "We're back to the Dark Ages, Joan." Joan looks at the data. She notices something the others have missed. The U-boats in the Mediterranean are using a slightly different version of the M4 than the boats in the Atlantic. It's a classic mistake of a sprawling military. Lack of synchronization. "If we can't get a codebook from the Atlantic," Joan says, her eyes gleaming with a dangerous idea, "we take one from the Mediterranean. The math should be a bridge. October 30th, 1942. The Mediterranean Sea. The HMS Petard is relentless. For hours, it has been dropping depth charges on U-559. The submarine is a shattered wreck, forced to the surface. As the German crew jumps into the dark water, 3 British sailors, Colin Grazier, Tommy Brown, and Tony Fasten do the unthinkable. They don't shoot. They dive into the sinking submarine. Inside the U-559, the water is rising. The lights are flickering. The sound of groaning metal is the sound of a coffin closing. They find the radio room. They grab a water-soaked pile of documents, the Wetterkirschlüssels, weather short signal code, and the short signal code book. Grazier and Fasten hand the books to the 16-year-old galley boy Tommy Brown, who is waiting on the conning tower. They turn back to grab the Enigma machine itself. But the sea is faster. The U-559 lunges downward. Grazier and Fasten are dragged into the abyss. They are 2 of the most important casualties of the warmen who died not to kill the enemy, but to steal their secrets. November 24, 1942, Bletchley Park. The stolen books arrive at Bletchley in a sealed bag, still smelling of salt and diesel. They are rushed to Hut 8. Joan Clarke receives the Wetterkirschlüssels. She doesn't mourn the men who died for it, not yet. She doesn't have the luxury. She lays the damp pages out and begins to map the new cribs. With the codebook in hand, the Banbarismus process becomes 1,000 times more powerful. Joan can now identify the ground settings of the four-rotor Enigma within hours instead of weeks. "This is it," she tells the team. "The M4 is no longer a mystery. It's a calculation. The results are instantaneous." Bletchley begins to decrypt shark messages in near real time, sometimes reading the orders before the U-boat captains themselves have finished decoding them. The black pit of the Atlantic begins to shrink. The Admiralty starts playing a godlike game of chess. They see a wolfpack forming at point X, and they move the convoys to point Y. They see a U-boat reporting low oxygen, and they send a hunter-killer group to wait for it to surface. But then, Joan sees a message that makes her blood run cold. It isn't a coordinate. It isn't a weather report. It's a direct order from Admiral Dunitz to all boats. The Germans have noticed the uncanny luck of the British convoys. They are beginning to suspect Bletchley exists. Dunitz has ordered a fifth rotor test. If the Germans add a fifth rotor, the math becomes physically impossible for the human brain to process, even with Joan's Banbury sheets. The blackout wouldn't just be a few weeks. It would be forever. "We have to stop them from changing the machine," Joan says to Turing. "How?" Turing asks. "We're codebreakers, Joan. We don't control German high command." Joan looks at the map of the Atlantic. "We don't have to control them. We just have to make them believe we're lucky. We have to let some of the ships sink." The room goes deathly quiet. Joan Clarke, the woman who had spent every waking hour trying to save lives, has just suggested the unthinkable, the calculated sacrifice, December 20th, 1942, the Admiralty O Room, London. The room is a cathedral of secrets. Wall-sized maps are covered in pins, strings, and wooden blocks representing the lifeblood of the British Empire. Prime Minister Winston Churchill is known to visit this room in the middle of the night, chewing on a cigar, staring at the U-boat graveyard, creeping closer to the English coast. Now, a new directive arrives from Bletchley Park. It is the most brutal logic of the war. To protect the secret that the M4 Enigma is broken, the Allies cannot save everyone. If every single convoy miraculously dodges every single wolfpack, the Germans will know their unbreakable machine is compromised. They will scrap the Enigma and build something new, something Bletchley might never crack. Joan Clarke sits in Hut 8, looking at a list of intercepts. She sees a U-boat position. She knows a lone merchant ship, the SS Ceramic, is steaming right into its path. She has the power to tell the Admiralty to divert the Ceramic. But she doesn't. She has to calculate the normal distribution of luck. How many ships can they save without looking suspicious? How many men must be left to the mercy of the Atlantic to ensure the war is won in 1944 rather than 1946? "It isn't math anymore," she whispers to an empty room. "It's playing God." On December 7th, the SS Ceramic is hit by a single torpedo. Of the 656 people on board, including 12 children and 17 nurses, only one man survives. Joan sees the casualty report the next morning. She says nothing. She simply picks up her pencil and returns to the Banbury sheets. This is the ultra secret. The burden is the price of victory. May 1943. The turning point. The Atlantic is no longer a hunting ground for the gray wolves. It has become a slaughterhouse. Thanks to Joan's work on the M4, the Allied hunter-killer groups are no longer searching for needles in a haystack. They are the ones doing the hunting. Armed with the precise locations of U-boat refueling tankers, the milk cows, the Allies begin to starve the German fleet. May 24, 1943. Admiral Dunnet sits at his desk in Paris. He looks at the reports from the last 3 weeks. 41 of his U-boats have been sunk. His own son, Peter, has vanished with U-954. The loss rate is nearly 100%. He picks up a pen and writes a message that Joan Clarke will read within the hour. Losses have reached an intolerable level. I am withdrawing the boats from the North Atlantic. The Battle of the Atlantic, the longest, most crucial campaign of World War II is over, and it wasn't won by a battleship or a bomber. It was won in a drafty wooden shack by a woman who saw patterns in the chaos. When the war ended, the Great Silence began. The heroes of Bletchley Park were told to burn their notes. They were forbidden from telling their parents, their spouses, or their children what they had done. Joan Clarke returned to a world that still viewed her as a clerk. She was awarded an MBE in 1946, but the citation was vague for services to the Foreign Office. Alan Turing, her one-time fiancé and closest intellectual peer, would be persecuted by the very government he saved, leading to his tragic death in 1954. Joan, however, lived a long, quiet life, becoming a respected numismatist and expert in old coins. She never sought the spotlight. She never complained that her name wasn't in the history books. But every time you see a freighter crossing the calm blue waters of the Atlantic, you are looking at her legacy. Joan Clarke didn't just break a code. She decoded the limits of what a human mind can achieve under the weight of the world. She proved that the most powerful weapon in the history of warfare isn't made of steel, but of logic, patience, and the quiet courage to see what others cannot.